There's something you want that you've stopped mentioning. Not because it went away, because you learned, somewhere along the way, that bringing it up past a certain point stops being vulnerability and starts being embarrassing. You learned the social math of desire. How many times is too many times? How long is too long to still want the same thing? When hoping out loud stops earning sympathy and starts earning the particular discomfort of people who don't know what to say anymore. So you got quiet about it. You still want it every day. You just want it alone now. There's a woman in an ancient story who wanted something so long and so deeply that it stopped being grief and became the permanent weather of her life. She showed up to the same place year after year, surrounded by the same people, carrying the same want, and learned to keep functioning inside it. She didn't stop wanting, she stopped being able to eat. And nobody around her could quite reach her, because the want had a specific shape that love alone couldn't fill. Her name is Hannah. And what happened the night she finally stopped hiding the size of it, even just for 1 hour, even just in one room, is going to say something true about what you've been carrying alone. You still want it. You just don't say so anymore. Not because it stopped mattering. If anything, it matters more than it did 3 years ago, 5 years ago, the first time you let yourself admit it out loud and watched the person across from you not know what to say. You learned something in that moment. Not to stop wanting, to stop telling. Because wanting something for this long out loud, in front of people who have moved on from the conversation, even if you haven't, that has its own specific texture of humiliation. It's not the wanting that breaks you. It's the wanting in front of witnesses. So you got quiet about it. You learned the social math of desire. How many times you can bring something up before you become that person. The one who's still on that. The one who hasn't accepted it yet. The one who makes dinners uncomfortable with the weight of something unresolved that everyone else has quietly agreed to stop addressing. You didn't want to be that person. So you built a version of yourself that could sit at the table and smile and ask about other people's lives and not let it show. The specific, daily, low-grade ache of carrying something you stopped being allowed to name. And here's what nobody talks about. Getting good at hiding, it doesn't make it smaller. It makes it more concentrated. The desire doesn't dissipate when you stop expressing it. It just goes somewhere without an exit. And you carry it there, in that sealed place, and you've gotten so practiced at the carrying that most days you almost forget it's there. Almost. Until something reminds you. A conversation. A photo. A moment where someone around you gets the thing you've been not mentioning, and you feel it move in that sealed place, heavy and unchanged, and you smile and say something appropriate and go home and feel it alone. There's a woman in an ancient story who knew this carrying, who showed up year after year to the same place, surrounded by the same people, with the same want pressing against her ribs, and learned to perform the ritual of ordinary life while privately being destroyed by the distance between what she had and what she needed. She didn't stop wanting. She stopped being able to eat. She wept when she thought nobody was watching. And she kept showing up anyway, because that's what you do when the desire has outlasted your ability to explain it to anyone. Her name is Hannah. And what happened when she finally stopped hiding it, even just once, even just for one unwitnessed hour, is going to say something true about the thing you've been carrying alone. Every year. That's the detail that breaks something when you really look at it. Not once. Not a single terrible occasion that Hannah survived and moved past. Every year the family made the trip to Shiloh to offer sacrifices. Every year the same altar, the same rituals, the same table. And every year Peninnah, the other wife, the one with children, the one whose body had done what Hannah's hadn't, would start. The text says she provoked her, year after year, to irritate her. This wasn't spontaneous cruelty. It was a practice. Peninnah had identified exactly where Hannah was most exposed and returned to that place with precision, repeatedly, until Hannah wept and couldn't eat. Think about what it takes to keep showing up to that. To pack your things, make the journey, sit at the table, participate in the feast, knowing what's coming. Knowing that the place that was supposed to be sacred, the annual ritual of approaching God, had become the place where her wound got reopened on schedule. Hannah didn't get to opt out. She went. Every year. And every year Peninnah was there. And every year the provocation came. And every year Hannah wept at the table that was supposed to be a celebration. Elkanah noticed. He loved Hannah. The text is clear about that. He gave her a double portion because he loved her. But his response to her weeping was the response of someone who understood love, but not grief. He asked her, "Why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why is your heart sad?" And then, meaning every word of it, completely missing the point. Am I not worth more to you than 10 sons? He was trying to fill the space with what he had to offer. He couldn't see that what she needed wasn't more of him. It was the specific thing that wasn't there. Love doesn't always know how to hold a grief it can't fix. Hannah got up from the table. Alone. While everyone else was still eating and drinking, she walked to the temple. And what happened there, what she did in that hour, and how it was received, is the part of the story that most people summarize too quickly. There's a specific kind of pain that doesn't have a socially acceptable name. It's not jealousy exactly. Jealousy implies you want to take something from someone, and you don't. You just want it for yourself. It's not resentment exactly. Resentment implies blame, and you know intellectually that the person didn't do anything wrong by having the thing you don't have. But it's not nothing either. It's something that lives in the body, not the mind. A physical response to proximity. The way a room gets harder to breathe in when the person who has what you want walks into it. The way you have to actively manage your face when the subject comes up. The way you've become fluent in a language of genuine happiness for other people that runs parallel to and completely separate from what you actually feel. And then there's the version of this that's worse. The person who knows, who is aware, specifically and precisely, of what you want and don't have, and uses that awareness not with cruelty exactly, but with a kind of casual deployment that assumes your wound is available to them. The comment that lands just slightly wrong, the comparison that didn't need to be made, the way they mention the thing in your presence, with a frequency that stops being coincidental. You can't prove it's intentional. You can't even fully convince yourself it is. But you feel it every time. The specific sensation of someone pressing on something bruised, lightly enough to deny, hard enough to hurt. Peninnah was that person for Hannah. And what the text doesn't tell us, what it leaves in the silence between the lines, is what Hannah did with the anger. Because there had to be anger. You don't get provoked year after year by someone sitting across the same table without something harder than grief building underneath. But Hannah didn't explode. She wept. She stopped eating. She internalized. Which is what you do when the person causing the pain is woven into the fabric of your life so completely that there's no clean way to remove him. You can't leave the table. You can't make them stop. You just absorb it and carry it and show up again next year. You know what that costs. You've gotten so good at the bracing that most people around you have no idea how much it takes just to show up. Elkanah loved Hannah. That part is not in question. The text goes out of its way to establish it. He gave her a double portion of the offering because he loved her, even as Peninnah received portions for each of her children. In a household where fertility determined worth, Elkanah tried to compensate with what he had. He saw Hannah weeping and not eating, and he came to her. He asked her questions. He was present. By almost any measure of what a husband in that world was expected to do, he was doing it. And then he said the wrong thing completely. Am I not worth more to you than 10 sons? The question is so well-intentioned and so precisely wrong that it almost takes your breath away. What he was offering was himself, his love, his presence, his value as a husband, as a substitute for the thing she was grieving. As if the math worked that way. as if enough of one thing could fill the space left by the absence of a completely different thing. He wasn't dismissing her pain. He was trying to solve it with the only currency he had. And in doing so, he made her grief about him, about whether she appreciated him enough, about whether what they had together was sufficient, when her grief had nothing to do with him at all. Hannah didn't argue with him. A text doesn't record a response, which is its own kind of answer. Sometimes the wrong comfort leaves you with nothing to say, not because you're angry, not because you don't love the person offering it, but because explaining why it missed would take more energy than you have. So you receive it, you let it land where it lands, and you carry the original grief, plus the quiet loneliness of having reached for connection and found someone who loves you and still couldn't quite reach you. Hannah didn't go to the temple with faith. She went with nothing left. That's the honest reading of that moment. She had sat at the table where she was supposed to celebrate and been destroyed instead. She had received the love of her husband and felt more alone for it. She had nowhere left to take what she was carrying. Not to Peninnah, not to Elkanah, not to the table, not to the feast. So she got up while everyone else was still eating, and she walked into the temple, and she did the only thing left to do. She poured it out, all of it. The years of wanting, the years of hiding the wanting, the specific exhaustion of performing ordinary life while privately coming apart. She let it move through her without managing it, without shaping it into something presentable, without making it small enough to be socially acceptable. Her lips moved. No sound came out. A woman so hollowed out by longing that the prayer has no voice left, just the shape of words, just the body going through the motion of reaching towards something, when the reaching itself is almost more than she can manage. This wasn't the prayer of someone who had it together. This wasn't faith that had processed the grief and arrived at peace. This was the raw, unperformed, completely undignified act of a person who had run out of places to put what she was feeling and had finally, in one unwitnessed hour, stopped trying to contain it. And that's where you are right now, isn't it? Not necessarily in a temple, but in that place where the desire has been carried so long and so quietly that you've almost forgotten what it feels like to let it be its actual size. Where you've gotten so practiced at the managing and the hiding and the performing that the unmanaged version of your own longing feels almost foreign to you now. You remember what it was like to want this openly, before you learned the social math, before you understood how many times was too many times, before you trained yourself to smile at the table and ask about other people's lives. And somewhere underneath all that training, underneath all that practice, the want is still exactly the size it always was. Unchanged, patient, waiting for one unwitnessed hour. Eli saw her, and he got it completely wrong. He was sitting by the doorpost at the temple, the priest, the authority, the person whose job was to recognize the presence of God in human experience. He watched Hannah's lips moving with no sound and concluded she was drunk. He said it out loud. He accused her, in the place she had come to finally be honest, of the one thing that would have made her presence there illegitimate. And in doing so, he took the moment of her greatest vulnerability, the moment she had finally stopped hiding, and turned it into something she had to defend. You know this moment too. Not necessarily this specific accusation, but the experience of finally letting the want show, finally saying it out loud, or letting it be visible on your face, or allowing yourself to need something in front of another person, and having that vulnerability met with the wrong response. The person who made it about themselves. The one who offered advice when you needed witness. The one who looked at the intensity of what you were carrying and decided it was too much, or misplaced, or evidence of something wrong with you, rather than evidence of how real the desire was. You opened something carefully, and someone handled it carelessly. And part of you closed again after that. Not all the way, but enough. Hannah didn't close. That's what undoes me about her response. She could have. She had every reason to accuse publicly in the temple by the priest at the moment of maximum exposure. Instead, she said, "I am not drunk. I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord." No apology, no shrinking, no adjusting the size of her grief to make it more manageable for the person who had just misread it. She named what she was doing with a precision and a dignity that stopped Eli in his tracks. She told him exactly what was happening and refused to be ashamed of it. That kind of response doesn't come from having it together. It comes from having nothing left to lose by being honest. Eli backed down. That's the part the story moves past too quickly. The priest, the authority in that space, the man whose accusation had the weight of institutional power behind it, heard Hannah's response and changed course completely. He didn't double down. He didn't qualify his accusation or soften it into a question. He just received what she said and responded. "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him." One moment he was accusing her of being drunk. The next he was blessing her. Hannah's refusal to shrink had reversed the entire dynamic of the encounter. She left the temple and ate, and her face was no longer sad. Not because Samuel had arrived, not because anything in her circumstances had changed. Peninnah was still there. The want was still there. Her womb was still empty. Something shifted that had nothing to do with the outcome, which is the most disorienting part of her story. For anyone who has been taught that peace is what you feel when the thing you wanted finally arrives. Hannah found something in that temple that preceded the answer. She poured herself out completely, was misread, defended her own grief with dignity, received a blessing, and walked out different. Not fixed, different. What changed was not what she had. What changed was what she was still carrying and how she was carrying it. You know the feeling of leaving a conversation different than you entered it. Not because anything was resolved, not because the person said the right thing, or the situation changed, or the want got answered, but because something moved in the telling of it, and the act of finally letting it be as big as it actually was, even just for a moment, even just in front of one person or in one unguarded hour. There's a specific kind of relief that has nothing to do with resolution. It's the relief of no longer having to manage the size of something, of letting it take up the space it actually takes up instead of the smaller, more socially acceptable space you've been compressing it into. What changes when you stop hiding it isn't the wanting. The wanting stays, but something shifts in the body. The particular tension of maintenance, the daily low-grade effort of keeping the size of it from showing, releases in a way that's almost disorienting. You didn't realize how much energy the hiding was taking until you stopped, and then you notice it in small ways. You breathe differently. The next time someone asks how you're doing, there's a half second where the honest answer is closer to the surface than it usually is. You don't necessarily say it, but it's there, which is different from where it's been. Sealed, compressed, managed into something that could pass for fine. The wanting didn't kill her. The hiding was what was killing her. And the hardest version of that truth, the one that's uncomfortable to sit with, is that nobody made you hide it. Not entirely. Yes, there were people who responded badly. Yes, there were moments where the vulnerability got handled carelessly, and you learned from that. But somewhere along the way, the hiding stopped being a response to other people and became a habit, a reflex, something you did automatically before anyone even had the chance to respond badly or well. You protected yourself from a reaction that hadn't happened yet. And in doing so, you also protected yourself from the possibility that someone might have held it carefully, that someone might have said the right thing, that letting it be seen might not have ended in humiliation this time. Hannah made a vow before she had anything to give. That's the sequence that most readings skip over. She didn't go into the temple with Samuel, already in her arms, already knowing the outcome, already in a position to be generous. She went in empty, and in that emptiness, she offered the thing she wanted most before she had it. If you give me a son, I will give him back. The vow wasn't a transaction exactly, though it looks like one on the surface. It was something closer to an act of release, a way of holding the desire loosely enough that it could move, could arrive and depart, without destroying her in either direction. Samuel came. Hannah kept the vow. She nursed him, weaned him, and then she walked him to the temple and left him there with Eli, the same man who had accused her of being drunk. She handed her answered prayer to the person who had misread her deepest moment, and the text says she worshipped. Not wept, worshipped, which is either the most confusing detail in the story or the most important one, depending on how long you've been carrying something you haven't been able to release. What Hannah understood, what the vow reveals, is that the desire was never only about possession. It was about participation, about being part of something that mattered, about her life meaning something beyond the wound. Samuel wasn't the end of the story. He was the beginning of one that was larger than her. And releasing him wasn't loss in the way that Peninnah's provocations had been loss. Passive, unwilling, humiliating kind. This was chosen. Active. A different relationship to the same ache. The thing you want most may arrive in a form you can hold, or in a form you have to release. It may come as possession, or as participation. It may ask something of you that looks, from the outside, like loss, but feels from the inside, like the first time you've been able to breathe around the wanting in years. Hannah didn't stop mattering to Samuel by leaving him at the temple. She became the reason he was there. What you give doesn't always diminish you. Sometimes it's the only way the wanting finally becomes something other than a wound. Hannah went home without Samuel. That's the image the story leaves us with. Not the miracle, not the answered prayer, not the moment of receiving. The moment of leaving. Arms that had finally held what they'd wanted for years, now empty again in a different way. Not the emptiness of longing. The emptiness of someone who gave something real and chose it consciously, and is now living with the weight of that choice. She went home. She went back to Elkanah, back to Shiloh the next year, back to the ordinary rhythms of a life that looked similar from the outside and was completely different from the inside. The text says she visited Samuel every year. She brought him a little robe she had made. Every year a new robe, sized for whoever he was becoming. A child she knew in annual installments. A son she had released into something larger than she could see from where she was standing. There's a tenderness in that detail that the grand narrative of answered prayer tends to obscure. She didn't get to watch him grow up in the way she'd imagined when she made the vow. She got something different. Something that required a different kind of love. Not the daily, proximate, ordinary love of a mother in the same house, but the kind that makes a robe every year for someone you trust to something you can't fully see. Every year she delivered the robe and walked back home. Same road, same hands. Arms empty again in the way she had chosen. The choosing didn't make it lighter. It just made it different. You came into this still carrying it. The want you've learned to compress into something socially acceptable. The desire that lives in the sealed place, unchanged, patient, waiting for one unguarded hour where you stop managing its size. You've been living this long enough that the hiding has started to feel like the wanting itself. Like they're the same thing. Like you can't have one without the other. They're not the same thing. The hiding is costing you something. And Hannah's story doesn't say the wanting kills you. It says the hiding might. You still have one unguarded hour available to you. One moment where you stop compressing it and let it be its actual size. Not for an audience, not for resolution, just because it's true, and it's yours, and it has been for long enough. What you do with that hour, still yours to decide. If this found you where you actually are, share it with someone who's still carrying something alone. They need to know the wanting isn't the problem.